Welcome to Cosmic Comics, Games and Collectibles, your zen of geekism. We carry comics old and new, magazines, toys, games like Pokemon, Magic, D&D. Want Godzilla, Ultraman, Star Trek, Ninja Turtles, Funko Pops? You'll find it all here. Shop our Cosmic Sound Room and pick up a record or two. Enjoy our Comic Coffee Lounge with a cup of Sasquatch coffee or a delicious menu item while geeking out over a super cool movie on our big screen. Come by and say hello to Maui. Cosmic Comic, Games and Collectibles. Superman loves us, and so will you.
And good evening once again, everybody. I am still RJ Carter, still Senior Managing Editor here at CriticalBlast.com, and this is our third live stream of the night. No, this is not the accidental start of another Podcast Palooza. This is our third and final live stream of the night. Podcast Paloozas are 12 hours long. 3 hours is amateur hour. We're never going to do that. If we're going to go big, we're going to go really big. So we're going to end the night off here with a Kickstarter for some crowdfunded comic book work. I've got to look at it like, yeah, picture. Okay, yeah, that's a comic book, because we've been all over the place tonight, and it's been a crazy week. Just the different projects we've been talking to. So tonight, I would like to welcome to the show Mr. J.D. Calderon to talk about everything that he's doing. J.D., how are you doing tonight, man?
I'm good, RJ. I'm good. Like I told you earlier, I'm a little crazy, but that's par for the course being an independent publisher.
You've got to be a little bit crazy to even consider being an independent publisher.
Yes. And especially for the amount of time that I've been one. So, yeah, I started in 92.
92, the halcyon days of my 20s.
Yes. Good years.
They were good years. Although, as a reader, I missed the 70s and 80s.
Okay.
But then, I grew up reading DC Comics. I grew up in Sparta, Illinois, so you probably know why I was reading DC Comics. But I had access to all of them because they were printed there.
Yeah.
And people just brought them home from the plant.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was like print overruns. If you knew a kid whose dad worked at the comic book plant, which is what I called it, you had a friend for life. And if he worked on late Saturday night shift when they printed the Playboys, you had a real good friend.
You're like, Timmy, how's your dad doing? Here's some cupcakes. Let me get those comics. Thanks. Right?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. As I got older, I ended up my cousin. She married a guy who worked there. And we'd go down on the weekends and be like, let me go get the long boxes. And he would just have dozens of copies of the same thing.
Wow.
He's like, take what you want. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll take, these Spawns. I'll take, tons of stuff. Always something to read. But, in the 70s and 80s, a story got told in an issue.
Mm-hmm.
If it took another issue, it was like, this is huge. And now it's like, settle in, folks. I'm here for 100 issues, and we're going to use every single one of them.
Yeah, it's changed quite a bit. It's funny because I lived through the 70s, right? But I was really engaged in the 80s because that's the time period that I grew up. Right, it was the 80s.
Yeah.
The 70s I was a kid, so there was just not much going there. I got to see Star Wars though in the theater, which was fun.
On my 10th birthday, I saw Star Wars the day it came out.
Oh, okay. So you're a year younger than me. I saw it when I was 9 when I saw
I'm a year older than you then.
Oh, you're older than me. Yeah, you're right.
I'm 54, so we can do the math now.
Oh, okay, there you go. Okay, so I'm 52. I'll be 53 in November. So yeah. So we're two old people talking about comics.
That's right. Settle
in, boys and girls. I'd go to the comic shop uphill both ways in the snow and barefoot.
Exactly. So but growing up, I got involved. I don't know how early you got involved, but I mean, I got involved fairly early, about 8 or 9 years old. And I think around, I don't know, it must have been 11. It was still in the 70s, like the late 70s, like 79, 78. I had a couple of guys where I lived. They took me, they were a little bit older than me. They took me downtown. I was about a mile away from Super Snipe. It was one of the original comic book shops in New York City. I don't think it was the first comic book shop ever opened. It was probably like the 7th or something. But this shop was just awesome. It was the size of a postage stamp. On Fridays, when the books came out, they'd have a line going down the block,
Nice.
right? Because they'd only allow in like 4 or 5 people or 6 or 7 people at a time.
And that
So you'd go
predates
in.
the direct market.
It was right there at the cusp. They were buying directly from Marvel and DC, but they were right at the cusp, right there. And I mean, you would go in, and they would just have all these racks. And the place was the size of a postage stamp, but he had ceilings. I think the ceilings were 20 feet. So from the floor to the ceiling, he had like all these comics going all the way up. Behind the register, he had these huge bookshelves, bookcases, and it went from the floor to the ceiling, filled with comics. I mean, it was a sight. He had this huge ladder that he would climb up on to go get books. It was crazy. But also in the same area with 2 other comic shops, there was the Bat Cave, right, which was a couple blocks down. But that place was only open on the weekends, and it was run by a couple of weed heads. So whenever you walked in there, they were always smoking pot, but they had comics, and they were reasonably priced. And then 2 blocks further down from them was the Bat Cave. That was a real comic book store. That place was just as awesome as Super Snipe, because I discovered the Teen Titans in there, and I discovered Continuity Comics, Megalith, Armor, Neil Adams' company.
Yeah, I remember, again, I was getting them for free. I was reading comics at 4 years old because my barber shop had them. And
Nice.
I would, so I went to school, started school, kindergarten, first grade, already reading, and nobody knew because I didn't tell anybody. I assumed that, everybody could. But yeah, you're talking my language here. Teen Titans and that Megalith stuff. And for the longest time, comic books were DC, Marvel, Harvey, Archie. Right. That was it. That's all there was. And then all of a sudden, my dad comes home with this stack. He'd seen his friend Gary and came home with a stack of comics. And I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, Superman, Batman, Ms. Mystic.
Yes, PC comics. Yes,
like,
love it.
What the heck is PC? Toss that aside. American flag? Who's where?
Those comics. Yeah.
Judge who? Judge Dredd? Eagle Comics? Yep. What the heck is this? So by the time I was 17 years old, this was in my high school yearbook.
Nice. Look at that. Yeah.
And that was, they knew I was a comic collector. It was my senior year, and they're like, okay, we're gonna come and take a picture of your room. And I was like, yeah, because I told them, I was like, I got comics all over the wall.
What's funny is a lot of those, because it's hilarious. A lot of these books, you see a lot of guys today, they salivate over those copies. That Secret Wars with the black suit Spider-Man.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff, they salivate over this stuff, and it's just like I go through convention. You see guys, I got this thing slabbed, and I'm like, whatever. I bought that off the rack.
Yeah. And when I bought off the rack, I literally, I would go visit my grandmother who lived 7 miles away, and she would send me up to the store, the IGA, and as soon as you walked in the front of the store, there was the magazine rack, and on the lower shelf was the comics, and I would start them through there. I remember when Secret Wars first hit. I'm like, I remember Spider-Man disappearing in Central Park and the Fantastic Four disappearing, and I was like, something's happening that's never happened before. Yeah. And when I saw Secret Wars 1, I'm like, I grabbed it. But I was also there. I assumed there were only like 50 copies of any comic printed at the time, I guess, because I would go through them all, and I would pick the most pristine version of each one, and I'd look around, and I'd bend the corner of the rest of them.
Wow.
So I was like, I've made this one more valuable by there being fewer mint copies in the world.
That's funny.
But that was the era that I was reading Marvel, the Secret Wars, the John Byrne Fantastic Four runs.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah. No, same thing. I mean, the only thing is that I discovered Kamiko Elementals, Grendel, Mage, AC Comics Captain Paragon for me. Oof, I love that book. I don't know if you know it.
I know Captain Paragon and Femforce.
Femforce, Phase 1 Phasers, very limited, only 4-issue run there.
That's a new one on me.
Yeah, Phase 1 Phasers. It was done by a guy called Vic Bridges. And the reason I remember it so fondly, because he was a John Byrne clone.
Okay.
That's why. So he was a John Byrne clone, so it just looked very Byrne-y. So I was just, so it was kind of fun seeing something that I knew it wasn't John Byrne, but it was fun to see it. Just like early Dale Keown on, what is it, Dragon Force?
Yes.
Dragon Ring and Dragon Force. You see that progression, where they move it from black and white into color, and the color looks, it's like spectacular because it has a certain, it's crude in a certain way, but it added so much to it being crude in that fashion. I was just like, oh, this is like weird and funky, but yeah, it's just the sort of thing I loved. I mean, that something like The Realm. I don't know if you remember, what was it? There was one, Samurai, was it? Samurai, there was Elf Lord.
I remember Elf Lord.
Right, there was Elf Lord. There was, what was the other one? There was a few fantasy ones. The Realm was one of my favorites from Arrow Comics.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's just a slew of books. Sunrunners, I don't know if you remember that book.
I think I actually do.
Mm-hmm. Sunrunners was a really good book. Zooniverse was one of these crazy books done by some Australian cats. And that dude, what's funny is like those books were released in the 80s, and I had just randomly pulled them out of my collection, read them again. I was like really happy that when I just started poking around, and I found the guy. He's still making them in Australia.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he's still making. And go ahead.
Still publishing Zooniverse.
Yeah, still publishing Zooniverse. And just recently, I think a couple years ago, he had I forgot the guy's name, but they did like an anthology book, and he had some of his Zooniverse strips in there. So that was cool.
Very cool. Yeah, it's like I've been doing the same thing. I've been hitting the dollar bins at my comic shop now because there's not very much new coming out that I'm interested in reading anymore in the mainstream.
Yeah.
Some of it, yeah, I mean, some of it will always be my favorite characters, but I hate getting a favorite character because I'm afraid of what they'll do to the character to take him or her away from me now.
Right.
Now, I'm still recovering from Marv Wolfman and George Perez leaving the Teen Titans. That was like the end of an era for me.
Yeah.
And then when Jeff Johns came on with the new team several years later, I'm like, they're back. I can read this book again. And that was even shorter lived. But the thing about your experience though with comics versus mine is that I make Matt Diesel look like Rembrandt if I try to draw something, and you had art skills to put to task.
No, I'm not an artist. I'm a writer.
You're not an artist.
I'm not.
You mean I could have been doing comics all this time?
Yeah. See, what happened was
I've wasted my life.
like, I guess I started writing when I was probably about 8 years old, right? And around 12 years old, I started writing comic scripts, right? Got into junior high school, and I met a guy there, right? And we became fast friends. We were really good friends. And he was an artist. And I was drawing too. And then I saw his artwork, and I looked at my artwork. And I was like, I can stop drawing now. Because I was like, he was just light years ahead of me, and I was just like, yeah, mine's is no. At an early age, I recognized this was not my thing. I said, but I can write, so I kept writing. And he went on to go to art and design, which is just a school in Midtown Manhattan, and it's just a school for art. And we had students, kids coming from all 5 boroughs, going to that school, and these were the best artists, in the New York area. And, it's not a small city.
No.
So you're pulling from a huge pool. So he would, I was at another school and I was playing Dungeons and Dragons. He was playing Dungeons and Dragons at his school. He was like, hey, come on over. I'll introduce you to some of the guys. So we would go over there, hang out, whatever. A couple years pass. We graduate, and I'm still hanging out with some of the guys at his school. Some of the guys became my friends, and we're still playing D&D or whatever, some superhero crazy game that we came up with. And I was like, all right, I want to do my own comic, because, all right, scroll back a couple years earlier. Remember the Comic Buyer's Guide?
Yeah.
CBG?
CBG.
Yeah. So
I had a subscription.
Yes, I had one. I would get it every week. Loved it. In there, I found a little article about these two dudes from Massachusetts who were doing very well with their comic, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And there was a little picture there, and I saw it, and I was like, I was 16, maybe 15. I was like, I can do better than that.
Yeah.
And so I put. Because a lot of people tell me they see the TMNT and they love it. They're like, oh yeah, it was my childhood. For me, it was never that. I was never a big fan of the Turtles. It was a driving force for me to get me to do comics. So I started working in that direction, and then we cobbled together a group of guys who were practicing, who wanted to get into comics, and then one of the other guys there, he said, listen, I'm gonna bring the best people from my class. And he did. He brought me, that's where I met Daphne, my wife, and the artist on Tall Tales.
I had no idea. I seriously had no idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah,
she's been on the show.
Yeah. She's we've been together ever since, we started dating. I think she was probably 17. I was probably 18, 19. And we've been together ever since. So,
that's
but
cool.
yeah,
that's beautiful.
Yeah, and it's just all through comics. I think all of my long-lasting relationships with my friends that I have to this day has been through comics. But we just started on that path, and we just started making books. I started a company called Golden Realm Unlimited. We released a book called Revelations. We had Revelation Saga. We had Reaver. We had Dreamweavers. We had Tall Tales. Security Agenda, and then we had a slew of other titles that never came out. But most, I think Reaver had 2 issues, Dreamweavers had 3, Tall Tales had 3, Revelations Saga, they were each 1 shots, and then Security Agenda I think had 1. And then we just had to call it quits because these books were coming out annually. And you can't sustain a business that way. So.
No. That's part of the problem with when I first started interviewing people doing crowdfunders 2.5 years ago. They're like, these books are great and all, and I understand you're standing up against the mainstream industry, but $25 a pop for once every year and a half, that's you're not gonna have people come back. How's you gonna sustain it? And now of course we've got people doing things like Miskatonic High. They're up to issue 12 and they're releasing a book every 3 months. So it's people adapting.
Oh yeah, it can definitely be done. For myself, we did that. Then my buddy, one of my artists, Matthew, he went on to work for Antarctic Press for a little while. Wasn't happy. He was doing Ninja High School. He did about 3 issues, and then he had we were still doing conventions, and we were still selling off our back stock, and we were just selling off artwork and stuff. And then he got approached by Central Park Media. And I remember when he first told me about it, he was like, yeah, we were on vacation. We were at Disney World. It was myself, Daphne, and him. And Daphne and I were still continuing Tall Tales. So we were still continuing that. But I was talking to him, and he was like, yeah, they're hiring me to do some adult comics. And I was like, oh, my God, how could you possibly even consider doing such a thing? Then 6 months later, he comes to me. He's like, listen, they're looking for a writer. And I was like, throw my name in a hat. So I ended up writing a slew of adult comics, but it rolled into us doing a Tenchi Muyo, which was an anime from the 90s. And we did 6 issues of that. We did 1 issue of something called Phantom Quest Corps. It was supposed to be the whole thing, but the person who put the deal together, that person ended up running off with a bunch of their money. She ran off probably with about $50K of their cash. Yeah, and that was their budget. so they had to kill the project, which was unfortunate because the book sold well. My only regret from that is that it was never compiled into a trade. That's my only regret, because I enjoyed the hell out of those books. The pay was good, but yeah, and it was fun. But the one thing I did learn is I didn't like working for anybody else. I didn't like working for other people. I especially don't like pitching. I don't like pitching to editors. I don't like write. I would write pitch sheets and I would like send it off, and they were like, okay, we can, whatever. So just hire me, let me do the thing, and let's move on.
Yeah. So you've been doing your own thing though too for a number of years. I mean, independent press.
Oh yeah. So what happened during that period? Daphne and we had put Tall Tales into Furlough, which was a magazine. It was like a furry magazine, or a comic book that was coming out.
I remember Furlough.
So, we were in there for 60 some odd issues. I mean, we were in there for a long time. We were the longest running series in there for quite a bit. And I think another series beat us out years later. But I remember one of the fans wrote to us and they were like, reading Tall Tales is like reading Tall Tales in Furlough, because there's only 5 to 8 pages per issue. It says it's like watching Lord of the Rings 5 minutes at a time.
Oh God.
So yeah, they were like, and then eventually we pulled it out of there, and we just started self-publishing again. And the Oswald Chronicles, originally I started writing it in prose, and that started happening around the time I was writing Tenchi Muyu, and I was doing the professional work, because what happened was I would get hired to do these books, and they hired me to do 10 issues, right? I was like, okay, no problem. And I was contracted for that, and I think I wrote those 10 issues in 3 months. So I was like, there you go. So I was done. My artist was, was working. Another series I said I wrote, and I would do it as quickly as I can. I would hand in the scripts. They were like, okay. And then I would be sitting on the side. So what am I going to do? So I started writing prose. I came up with the Oswald Chronicles, and I started writing in prose because I didn't have an artist. I was like, okay, so let me flex this muscle. And then a few years back, I had a windfall of cash land in my lap, right? It's probably about $5K. And it's like, just money that just appeared. I was supposed to pay somebody, I was supposed to repay a loan, and they forgave it. They were like, yeah, don't worry about it. And I was like, that's very kind of you.
Yeah.
Right. So I was like, okay. So I had this cash. I was like, all right, because I was all ready to pay. I was like, no problem. They're like, yeah, don't worry about it. I was like, okay. So I was, I've told this story before. I'll tell it again. But, most normal people will go on vacation, put some money aside for the retirement, put the down payment on a car. No, I decided to do a comic book. So I found my artist, Jade Gonzalez. She's been with me ever since. It's probably about 12 years ago. And we just started working, and I used that money to capitalize, the initial story. And then once that was done, I decided to continue. I was out of funds at that point, and I really didn't have a way to monetize it at the time. We would, print them up as little books and just go to conventions, but it wasn't enough to monetize the way I had cash. But I was playing online poker, and I had a decent amount of winnings on there. So I said, all right, send me a bunch of that, and I used that to finance more Oswald. And then a couple years later, what appeared? Kickstarter. Right.
At which point, everybody and their brother could get on here with no experience and try to do what you'd been busting your ass to do for years.
Exactly. And I mean, but the one good thing was during that period, I had stockpiled a lot of material. I think at this point now, I'm probably at around 13, maybe 1,400 pages of material on the Oswald Chronicles. So it's a lot of material. So I was able to stockpile it. I've been releasing it, slowly over the years. Yeah, and it's just been that. And like I said, it's the first time I've gotten that designation. What is it? Projects we like or love.
Yeah, and let's take a look at that project here, because that is, the reason why we bring people on the show to highlight their projects. Mm-hmm. So this project is called We Were Just Passing Through 1 through 4 and some alt covers.
Right.
I like the title. It's a bit of a mouthful, but
Because what's funny is it's the Oswald Chronicles, and what happened was I had forgotten to put it in the front, which is normally what I do, and then I put the secondary title, We Were Just Passing Through, behind it. But it was just too much. So I was like, what am I gonna do? I'll just put We Were Just Passing Through and some old cards. I'm thinking, because all right, normally I would make anywhere from 2 to 3K on a project, like this. But this one, just like the first 2 days, just shot off like a bullet. Now, mind you, I started this 3 days ago, and it's a 28-day campaign. No, I started on Monday. So it was a 28-day campaign. We're up to day 23. We've got 23 days left, I should say. And it just took off, and we were just like, what is going on? And what I'm thinking of, I'm just wondering, is since I didn't use the Oswald Chronicles, which has had a lot of campaigns, maybe their algorithm saw this and just like it didn't throttle it. Maybe it pushed it forward because it thought it was a brand new campaign or something, like a brand new book. So who knows?
Possible.
Yeah, who knows?
Because you've done. See, Indiegogo tells me how many projects somebody's done. This one's not being as forthcoming.
Yeah, but I think I'm at 22.
That's a lot of projects.
Yeah.
It's about time that you got this kind of notice and recognition and speedy. Yeah, it's about time. That's all I'm going to say. This is 1 through 4 of We Were Just Passing Through, plus alt covers for 7 and 8 of Passing Queens and Making Homes.
Right.
So, again, a mouthful.
Yes, a mouthful. So I'll go through the whole thing. I'll explain it to everybody. So here's the one thing. For anyone who's out there who wants a back, I still have, I'm giving a giveaway for the first 41 physical backers. So I'm gonna show you some stuff. So I'm giving everybody this sticker, right? I'm giving everyone. Well, because I also have PDFs.
Right.
I sell a lot of PDFs.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I sell a decent amount of digital.
Yeah, that makes sense. And a lot of people love digital; they have to have it.
Yeah,
they can't keep physical books. So,
so I'm giving away that sticker. I'm giving away this sticker.
Going too quick. Let me get you a full screen.
Okay. So I'm giving away this sticker.
Nice.
Which is Oswald at a point in the future, with him tripping out on power.
Final form.
And then I got this one. It was a little cute one that I had done a few years ago. Him is like a little chibi thing. And then I have this, right? This is a coaster.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's funny when they first approached me with it, I was like, a coaster? That's really silly. I said, but then I said, you know what? Let's throw that up there. And it actually came out very nice. And then we also have this little guy, and that's a pin. That's an acrylic pin.
Yeah. I have an idea, JD, that I know where you shop.
Oh yeah, yes, that's exactly where I shop. Yes, exactly. Those guys are awesome. Daphne and I took advantage of for weeks we were just just getting a whole bunch of stuff from them. So it was a lot. It was really cool.
I've been taking advantage of them not only for the stickers and the pins that we give away to the people who sign up for our membership on the YouTube. Why anybody would sign up for it, I don't know, but people have. So we give them a sticker and a keychain, which gives me an excuse for getting rid of them. But business-wise, I use them for this.
Okay.
We're a book distributor. We distribute a lot of crowdfunded stuff. And I was like, well, this is an option that I will give my clients that they can pay for this. But the first 5 of them I'll do for free because I can get the deal on the bags just to show them. I was like, yeah, your Gemini mailer fits perfectly in here. It seals, and if the not only does your customer get to see what's arrived without having to get an expensive box, which are cool but are expensive, but also it's not cardboard. So if it's raining cats and dogs when the mailman leaves it on the porch, it won't get
Yeah.
wet.
This is true. So hold on, I wasn't all right. And then I can show
Oh, you
up
got
these. Oh yeah, there's always more. So these
But
are
wait,
the first.
there's more.
Yeah, these are the first two issues that we were just passing through. Right. That's Oswald. He has these guys here. They're called there we go. These guys here, they're Calcians. They're another race that live in Manhattan. Yeah, and that's the other thing. Oswald lives in the middle of Manhattan. He's on 54th Street and Park Avenue. That's where he lives. He lives on these malls. It's a meridian that separates north and south bound traffic in Manhattan. And on them is they're very curated. They're very manicured lawns. Around in that entire area is just banks, very very wealthy banks, and they have these beautiful malls with flowers and all this stuff. And Oswald lives on one, and he lives with two characters. He lives with Diane and Ordith. One's an ogre, and the other one's a troll. Excuse me, and the other one's a fairy. And there's guardians, and these guys are on they're on a mission. They stole an object from another race, and they're running from them. And that's these guys here. Those guys, the frog-looking guys. They're called Grogs.
Yeah.
So, and Oswald's just in the middle of this. He's like, "What's going on? Why are you people here? Get off of my house!" You know, so what are you doing here? You know, and they're like, "Look, these guys are chasing us. We're gonna die." And then these issues 3 and 4. Let's see the next two issues. Oh, that's Diane. That's Oswald. And this is Oswald meeting up with one of their ancient sorcerers. His name is Kirchner. And he explains what's going on to Oswald in the story. So those are that's the 4 issues. And then we also have...
I need Don Pardo.
We also have these 2 issues. These are the alternative covers for Passing Queens and Making Homes. This is issue 7 and 8, right? So I have these, and I also have a catch-up level. So if someone wants to buy these, they can still get the other issues 1 through 6, if they want to do that. I would normally have done them as separate campaigns, but I have so much stuff coming up. I was like, you know what? Let me just gang them all together. Oh, and there's one last thing. Sorry. It's this. And that is a what is that? Hard enamel or cloisonne. I don't think anybody. I didn't really hear anybody say cloisonne anymore. But there's a hard enamel pin that I had done up. So
that's a You've been buying from Sticker Mule so long that Wizard Pins found out where you were.
Yeah. Actually, no, I didn't do that through Wizard. I did that through another person, through a broker. If you want to find out, I'll let you know who they are. But mad cool people. They did a fantastic job for me. But yeah, all that stuff is available. What's funny is I hit 2,300 without announcing any stretch goals. Because my first stretch goal was at 1,500. My second stretch goal was at 2,000. I'm like, we blew right through them. I haven't posted up anything about them.
Make those stretch goals a little stretchier now.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna do probably one at every $500. I'm doing a set of trading cards. So I want to do 9 cards, and at every level we'll put out another one. So it might take 2 campaigns to get the entire set. So the front of the card is gonna have individual artwork, and then the back of the card, though, when you turn them, and if you put them in a sleeve, or you just put them together, they're gonna make one image. So I don't know if you've ever seen cards like that. So we're doing that for the stretch goals.
I have. I think I have, but it's been so long since I've been in the card market. I keep telling people when they're doing campaigns, like, "Oh, we're doing the cards wrong," because you and I, we lived through the '90s, the Fleer Marvel. So you bought a pack, and it wasn't a set; it was a random pack,
right?
And you had to put them together, and remember when you would get like cards 1 through 9 finally assembled, and you put them in your sleeve, and it was a picture. Right. It was like your 9 different characters, but they were all in this thing. I'm like, what you all got to do is find 8 other people who are running campaigns, and get one person to draw a 3x3 grid where all your characters there, and then put your character in your campaign, and say, by the way, the other 8 cards are in these other 8 campaigns. And now, well, I was gonna get the Oswald Chronicles and Tall Tales, but now I've got to go get these other 7 campaigns because I'm OCD and completist and I collect and you just send each other to each other's campaigns. Granted, that might mean that an Oswald Chronicles might be referring somebody to lore, but. and we'll make a very interesting addition to the 3x3 grid.
Right.
I say that because I knew you knew what it was.
Oh yeah, that's funny. Yeah. I love Krista. I don't know if I'd want to do a Oswald lore crossover though.
It wouldn't fit. It wouldn't make sense.
Yeah. But it would be funny. What's funny is Daphne and I, for her Ego Raven, we're it's going to be a little bit down the road. I already wrote the story. She has yet to illustrate it, but we have a crossover with Oswald and her character Ego Raven. And we're going to do a comic where if you back both projects at the same time, you'll get that book as a freebie.
I have seen people try to do that to well received as well. I think the Embrace did that with Perfect 10. So if you back both books, you got a print of the 2 characters together. So you told me that Oswald is he's living in New York. He's living downtown Manhattan. He's a mouse.
He's a mouse. Yes, he's a mouse.
Is he living in this world or is he living in a furry world?
Okay, no.
A furry world.
No. What it is that there are 2 worlds, right? There's the world of man, and there's the world of the Fae, right? And the 2 worlds, they coexist at the same time, in the same place. Just we can't see the Fae because of their glamour. Okay, Oswald straddles both worlds. He straddles the world of magic and I guess what we refer to as logic. So he straddles those 2 worlds, the world of man and the world of Fae. The Calcians are a little different. The Calcians and the Grogs were actually in America, or Pangea. Well, they have another name for it, which I'm not recalling at the moment. But they had another name. They were on this land before men ever arrived, and what had happened was they're tiny, and once they saw a man coming, they knew their time. If men could see them, they would be destroyed. So they were like, okay, what are we gonna do? So the 2 races got together with their greatest sorcerers, and they created a device that would make all of them invisible, right? And the Calcians got to keep the device. Okay. Now, but it's locked in a vault, and the vault is very special. And the Grogs got the key to the vault. This sorcerer that we see in this picture here, his name is Kirchner. He's the one that designed the key, right? And what had happened was the Grogs, they had a small army that was attached to this key. They were designated to move the key, and that's their job. The Calcians, they figured out where they had moved the key and where it was at. They knew it was in a stationary spot. They knew it wasn't going to be there for long. They put together this tactical team. And they were like, okay, we're going to go get the key. Because even though everything was running fine, you always have some jerk who's saying, we could be doing better.
Yeah, of course.
So he's out there and he wants to study the magics of the key, and he wants to, do that sort of thing. And that's where this conflict comes from. These guys, the Calcians, they have this key that they stole from the Grogs, and the Grogs, they're like, yo, you got to give us this back. We're just gonna chop all of you up and eat you. And Oswald's in the middle. And the other important thing is the Calcians all they do is magic. Their science is magic, right?
Okay.
And Oswald, he's still relatively young at this point. He's equivalent age of maybe like a 19-year-old or something. He's very young. But the Calcians introduce him to structured magic, and he starts to learn from them. And the thing about Oswald is he's a savant at magic. So I explained it once before in the podcast, but the way I envisioned Oswald is like he's a mouse, right? And that's literally what he is. He's a mouse who's sentient, and he's the only animal on the entire planet that's like that. But a lifespan of a mouse is what, maybe 2 years, right?
Right.
So they grow from a pinky, right, to I guess somewhat of an adult or a teenager. What, 6 weeks, 7
Yeah.
weeks? What would take a human child 18 years, right? So in 7 weeks, he learned or could learn what it would take a human 18 years. Okay, so that's how fast he learns. So he learns at that breakneck pace, you know. So he learns things very quickly, and he learns how to read. He learns all these different things, and yeah, that's just the way he is. Eventually, he becomes a great sorcerer. He ends up in Dream eventually, and in Dream, he's trapped for about. He's more or less in a self-induced coma, and he's there for about 2 weeks. And during that time, he lives about 80 years.
Wow.
And during that time, he becomes an emperor, he becomes a husband, he becomes a father, he becomes a grandfather.
It's like that Star Trek Next Generation episode with Picard.
Which it's funny. It's more for me. I forgot the story that I was referencing, but yeah, it's similar to that where he's trapped in Dream. I get the idea from it's H.P. Lovecraft, Dream Quest of the Unknown Kadath.
Oh yeah.
Right. So yeah, it's the story of I think it's John Carter, and he goes Randolph Carter. Yes.
John Speaking of Randolph John Carter, I know this thing.
There you go. There you go. So you're the RJ. So yeah, Randolph Carter, he goes through Dream, and then at the end, what is he? He wakes up, and it's just like, oh, he went through all that stuff. So that was the idea. So Oswald lives this huge, complicated life. During that time, though, he became a very accomplished sorcerer. He the way he studied, they had a huge library, and he was an emperor, so he'd always get more books in. And they already had a huge library, and he would go in there. One of the things he learned how to do early on was stop time. And what he would do is, if he stopped time at a point where he was already like gone to the bathroom, eaten or whatever, he would stay like that, in that form. And he would stop time, and he would go into a room, stop time in the room, and then study and practice. And to him, he was probably in there for a month. On the outside world, he was only in there for an hour. So, and he did a lot of that. And he was warned never to do it because he could freeze himself in time and never just disappear, yeah. Right? But, he was like, Oswald was like, he's like, I figured out the mechanics. I'm fine. I'll be okay. And it worked out for him. So he ended up becoming this huge, he ends up becoming a battle mage. He ends up becoming a lot of different things. The people he ends up with, the Mar, they were warlike already. And he was chosen to become their leader because their king or their emperor is not chosen by like a line of lineage. Like, this is my kid, he's going to take over. It's like, no, it's by this unique creature that they find and they take over. The race itself they're actually made out of energy, and they take on the form of whatever their new king is. Their prior king looked like a squid. Their new king looks like a mouse, so everybody turned into a mouse. And yeah. So but throughout this entire thing, it was theorized that it was a plot to destroy Oswald. They wanted the entities that wanted to destroy him got him trapped in Dream, and what they wanted was for his body to die in Dream. I mean, in reality, so that he would be stuck in Dream, so he'd be less of a threat. But his guardians kept raising armies, right? And they would attack the Mar, trying to get him. And it's a bit of a conundrum in the story, because it's funny, because he falls in love with his wife Belinda, who was the former king's daughter, and they have children, all this stuff, and they grow up. He lost a number of his children in these wars, and he himself had to do, incredible things, to fight off these armies. And then when he gets back into reality, when he finally comes out of it, for a long time he just thinks it was a dream, that this stuff wasn't real, And then later on, he discovers that Dream is real, and that some of his children did escape, and some of them are still alive. And this causes a rift between him and his friends in reality, because he's like, you basically killed a bunch of my kids. So he's just like, he doesn't know how to react to that. So that's one of the things with the story. A lot of people see it and it's like, oh, look, it's funny and it's cute. You have the cute little mouse and all these little things, but the story there, I try to put in there, a certain amount of emotional content, a certain level of emotional gravitas that's in the story. But there's also a lot of fun. So
yeah, it's
like
very it's very quest-like. I mean, this is take the ring to Mount Doom kind of thing. Now you talked about his lifespan. Is that did that put any limitations or rush on the story you wanted to tell? Because
No.
because he's only going to live 2 years.
Well, see, that's the thing that makes him very unusual for a mouse. He lives for a lot longer than a normal mouse does.
Okay, so
yeah, he's probably around for like a good 20 years. Because here's the crazy thing, right? Oswald, he has 3 lives. He has his first life, which is on the mall. He has a second life, which is in Dream, and then he has his third life when he's resurrected. Okay, so that's his life. He has 3 lives. So he's murdered at some point, and then he's resurrected later on, about 5 years after his death.
now,
And yeah,
is Oswald's story, is it over or is it still ongoing?
no, it's still going. As a matter of fact, I promised myself that I would be done writing this series by the time I'm 55. So that's and I've been writing this probably since 98, no, earlier. Wow, since about 94, 93.
It'll be the end of an era.
Yeah, but I promised myself I would be done writing it by the time I'm 55. And I am probably only one story away from finishing it. So I've already I ride the subway every day, and I'm on the subway, and I have one of these little books with me,
Oh yeah.
and I'm constantly, and I'm doing, and it's this.
That's
Yeah.
Yep. I've been there.
Yeah. So that's me on the subway every day, and I'm like, in between work. So it's
And I find, doing that, not just, taking advantage of the time where, you're just sitting to take it and write, but doing it by hand.
Oh yeah.
Slows you down, makes you think. It slows you down in a good way. I'm not saying it's like an impediment, but it's like, if you're going to put the word to the page, you're thinking more about it rather than, typing quickly onto a word processor where it's like, oh, I don't like that backspace.
It's funny. It's actually the opposite for me. For me, if you were to see my handwriting, I write like crap, but I can decipher it. But for me, I write very quickly, right? But I don't think, like I think about it, but it's very stream of thought. It's just whatever comes to my mind. I just blot it down. I'm what they refer to as a pantser, right? Not a plotter, of a pantser. So I'm just, and what my thing is this: whenever I start constructing a story in my mind, my key thing is to figure out the ending first, right? So then I have something, right? Not really. I know my ending. I might know my beginning, right? And then I work my way through, but I have a goal, so I know where I'm going. So that works for me. And then what I do is, I do like like these books, they'll be sitting there for months before I transcribe. So I haven't touched the story in about 3 months, and then I come in, I'll transcribe it, and then that's a layer of edit that I go in, and I'm editing. Then I'll take it, print it out, and I will put it on the side, and it'll sit there for months. And then I'll take it out and I'll beat it up and I'll do whatever I have to do to it.
It takes a while for the yeast to rise and ferment.
Yeah. Well, the saying I always use, and I don't even know if it's true or not. The one thing I heard a long time ago is that with silversmithing, the more you beat the silver, the purer it becomes, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I view my stories. I beat them and I beat them and I beat them until, you know, I mean, I hopefully end up with something that I, well, certainly I enjoy. And that's the other thing, you know, there's so many different thoughts on this. Like, you know, there's one group of writers that they'll be like, oh, well, find out what your fan base wants and then create to that, right? So that you could become successful. That's fine. If that's what sings to you, that's fantastic. You understand? When I was doing commercial work, that was that. Okay. I was doing what the boss told me to do. With this, I'm doing what I want to do.
Yeah.
So I'm telling a story that I'm hoping that I share with everyone, that I hope we all will enjoy. You know, and that's how I work Oswald. That's how I work Tall Tales. These are things that I enjoy. You understand? I don't know if anybody else is going to enjoy them. So far, so good. You know.
So we have a question in the chat here from Heroinberg. It says that there are so many recent Oswald Kickstarters. Which one is the current one? That would be the one we're on now. And I'm going to. And Heroinberg, I just found out about it as we started. I didn't know about it in advance of the campaign or in advance of the live stream.
Yeah, I just launched this on Monday.
Yeah, and I will be. I'll put this in the description of the video after we're done here, so that people who are watching this on the replay, it's right down there. Right now, we're pointing to the OswaldChronicles.com website, but you want to get a hold of this one.
And just to say, the artwork is done by Jade Gonzalez, incredible artist. She lives in Chile, and it was funny because at the time I was just looking to get spot illustrations for Pro Stories, and I remember I'd written her and I said how much, you know, and she had gotten back to me and she had said you know, says, oh, I could do comic pages for this, and I was like, really? I was like, wow, okay. I'd never thought at that point in time, I wasn't even thinking about comics, and I was like, really? Wow, okay. And I had that windfall of cash, and that's when I said, okay, let's do the project. And I've been working with her ever since. You know,
So that windfall of cash that you talked about earlier, that's what caused Oswald #1.
Yes. Well, no. See, I'm a genius. I started in the middle. I didn't start at the beginning. Like most smart people start at the beginning.
Yeah, well,
you know, I started at the
middle. That's too easy.
Oh yeah, makes it way too easy. See, that's the reason why, you know, I have questions like, where do you start? Because, okay, we have, I've done a number of campaigns. The true beginning is my first day in Passing Queens. Okay, my first day is a one-shot. It's 24 pages, and it's basically his origin story, and it's him telling his story. He's in the, you know, point of, he's telling it as in the past tense. He's just telling his story, because that's the other thing. Oswald is also a scribe. So he wants to be a writer. So, and then that's also the type of magic that he does. It's called scrolling, where he writes the letters in the air or whatever. But he tells his tale of where he started, and that's in that first issue. It's basically his origin story. Then, Passing Queens and Making Homes, one story flows right into the next. So you're literally seeing him go from one story 2 or 3 days later, and it just follows this story. And he encounters these two young kobolds. They're Jones and Alicia, and they're brother and sister. Oh yeah, 23 days left. So they're brother and sister, and they have this whole huge adventure, and that's 8 issues for those two things. This story comes right afterwards, and that's we were just passing through, and that's where he's still very young, and he learned, and the Calcians are the ones that introduce him to magic. So that's where this continues. But I've had other stories that I've published. I published I published My Time with Clive, which is a period in his life when he's in Dream, and he's traveling through Dream with a baby angel called Clive. and he's a Cyclops at that. So he's a baby
angel Cyclops.
Yes. And he's also a giant. So, like, you know, in Dream, Oswald's like people size, right? But Clive is like a 5-story building.
Oh wow!
You know, he's huge.
He's Clive Jew.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Kaiju Clive.
Yes, and what Oswald does is he shrinks him down so he's a little bit more manageable to travel with. But yeah, but I did a series of those stories. There's one called On the Wings of Deidre, which I printed in a graphic novel, but I haven't printed a comic book form, and I'm gonna eventually get to doing that. Yeah, and there's just a number of other stories that I've done. So it's just So yeah, when you start there.
So when it comes time to start the Kickstarter campaign for
Mhm.
the Oswald Chronicles Omnibus,
Yes.
what order are you going to put them in? Chronologically published or chronologically storytelling?
Storytelling chronologically, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
And like I said, I'm more because that's the one thing. My goal now is just to write them to release them in chronological order from this point on out. So, I mean, we'll see. I'm trying. I mean, yeah, I have a list of all the stories because I have a level for this fairly pricey level on there that's called the Ultimate Book level, and it is all of the comics that I've printed up until this point. I guess it has 3 chapbooks which are in prose, and then it has like 2 or 3 other prose books. It has 2 hardcovers that are both prose and comics, and I think there's a few other things in there. Yeah, that one, the Ultimate Book level.
$262. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get everything.
Yeah, that has everything that I have. It's there. I think I had a couple people back it on this one. What's funny is before the last campaign, I had stopped offering this level because nobody wanted it. Like no one would ever buy it. So on the last campaign, someone had asked me, "Say, hey, you used to have this level," and I was like, "Okay, sure. If you want it, I'll put it up for you." So I put it up, and I limited. I put 3, and all 3 of them were backed. And I was like, "Okay." So I put it on this one, and 2 people backed it, which is great.
That's all you needed to get
Yeah,
back
exactly.
as far as your goal was, really close enough.
Yeah, very close. So yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. The other one is I have an Ultimate PDF level, which is $40, which pretty much has all of this as well, just as a PDF.
As a PDF, and $40 for an instant collection of everything Oswald. That's a deal for the people who we have here who are digital only folk. We've got some that we've got people who working in the tundra on pipelines. They can't take their long white boxes with them, so they read on their device.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a bunch of prose. There's probably about 600-700 pages worth of comics in there, and then probably another 600-700 pages of prose.
Yeah. Now, why did you when you set out to write this? Mm-hmm. What steered you toward this particular genre? And I don't mean the fantasy genre, because mm-hmm. whatever floats. Actually, whatever floats your boat either way is fine. But what made it more interesting for you to tell this story using anthropomorphism rather than realism?
That's kind of funny because so we have Oswald himself, right? I chose a mouse because I wanted to tell the story of the tiniest, most harmless creature, right, can make a difference. Okay, so that's the genesis of the story. You, no matter how small and meek you ever feel, you can make a difference. That's for everyone, right? So that's where that comes from. Now the part that it being anthropomorphic is the funny part. So Calcians, I'd always, my friends and I, we would walk through Central Park at night, right? And in New York, in Manhattan, and Central Park at night, very few people do it. It's beautiful at night. There's very few people, and you get to see the park from a different perspective. It's glorious during the daytime. It's just as glorious at nighttime. And one of the things, we were playing role-playing games, and I'd always envisioned like these tiny race of people just running around in the trees, just being there, and it was just one of these crazy things that came to mind. And then, you eventually come up with, would they have a counter to them, right? And it was then I came up with the grogs, and, they were like frogs, and it was all weird. And I came up with this weird history. Now with Oswald, and the Calcians, I'd always envisioned them. They were supposed to look like teddy bear hamsters, right? So, that's where they come off as like, these anthropomorphic things. But in the prior story, there were kobolds and orcs. Okay, so the kobolds, I had told my artist Jade, I was like, yeah, it's just, they kind of dog-like, right? And it has kind of like some dog-like features, and then she drew them as dogs, and I was like, okay, fine. And then the orcs, I said, yeah, they kind of pig-like, and she drew them like pigs, and I was like, all right, fine. Here's because it's funny because a lot of people ask me, oh, do you confer, do you talk to your artists about your story and what you want to do, and I'm like, no, I don't. Like, if you can ask Daphne, we do not discuss tall tales. I just write the scripts and I give them to her. Now, here's the thing, though. If I give her a brand new character, I have no say as to what that character really looks like. Okay? She does what she does. That's her portion of the job.
Sure.
Same thing with my artist here, Jade. I made the suggestion, and she gave me what she gave me, and it looks fantastic. So I'm like, who am I to second guess, the artist? So I let her, do her thing, So yeah, so that's the funniest thing, because it's really supposed to be elves, fairies and elves who look human, right? That's supposed to be the main crux of what's going on. Like, eventually he runs into a gnome named Dauphin, who he becomes good friends with, and he's a gnome, and so it's supposed to be like him and characters like Diane. Oh, the trolls, they look trollish, and then you have ogres. But these first few issues just ended up very furry for some reason. It was just very funny.
So you got dragged into anthropomorphism by accident.
In this particular instance, but Oswald himself is an anthropomorphic character, so.
No, it's true, but he was going to be the only one.
Yeah, he was supposed to be the only one.
And in case y'all are thinking, cute, fuzzy, anthropomorphic, funny animal book, please take a look at these three gentlemen getting their heads severed all at the same time by the one big long sword. That's ew.
There's some stuff, because he's a sorcerer. He's doing blood magic. So he's doing soul siphoning and blood magic, and so anyone who likes role playing games, you pretty much understand what's going on there.
Yeah, there's a lot of adventure in this book.
Oh yeah.
And all the lettering's been removed, thankfully, so we're not giving away the story here, because I forget how many pages I've scrolled by here, but I've scrolled through a book, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, no, actually, it's not the whole book; it's just a portion of it. But yeah, it
feels like the whole book's worth of pages, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I try to put a decent amount of pages so everybody can see it. And the one thing I do is I remove the words, so that it's just like, okay, you got to buy it. You want to really find out what's going on, you got to read it.
Yes, absolutely. And you've got a lot of different tiers here. It would take another hour, I think, to go through and give all the tiers their due diligence. But folks in the chat, you know how this works. You can go through and pick what you want. Do you have a featured tier? Sometimes they have that.
Kickstarter doesn't do features.
Kickstarter doesn't do that. That's right.
Not yet. I'm hoping to get that one. They keep sending me surveys. It's one of those things I write in.
Yeah. Do you stay with Kickstarter, or do you go to both campaigns, both platforms?
I've done both platforms. I do have a live one on Indiegogo, and on there you can find like Passing Queens and Making Homes. You can find My Time with Clive. You can find blanking. There's so many titles. I just blanked.
Sure.
On hold on, I'm gonna find it on my list. I swear. Fallen Gods. Yes. And that one, and that story is actually in color. So that one's in color. And the last 3 issues of My Time and Clive were in color as well. It's a little weird how that happened. I just ended up with some extra money, and I just decided to get those 3 issues colored as a test.
Make them. So you ever thinking about you ever think you're gonna release the whole thing in color?
Eventually, yes. Okay, so here's my business model, and this is something like, I don't know how much self-publishing you've done, RJ, but it's expensive. It's expensive to hire people and pay them and do all that jazz, right? So what I'm doing is this initial run of books is a black and white. I put them out there, limited edition. They're 250 copies. They're signed and numbered. Okay, all of the books. And once that is done, that numbering convention is done, I will not be reproducing them in the same format again. Okay, so you may see it again as a trade paperback, but you're not going to see it as a comic book.
Okay.
You may see it again in color. Okay, so the idea is I'm going to do it as like this in black and white. Like this one, the alternative covers of Passing Queens. I had done this cover here and this cover here, right, was done by Donnie Harijawa, and it was colored by Carlos Moreno. And also this image up here, right here with the dragon. This is, I think, the 5th issue cover. So I had already published them with Jade Gonzalez as covers, and those were done through Kickstarters. And now I'm re-releasing those same books in black and white, but with Carlos Moreno's, with Donnie's covers. So yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So eventually you'll see it in color, and they'll have like either the same covers or different covers. I haven't decided yet. And yeah, so and then eventually you'll see it as a color trade paperback, and that'll be like, I guess, its ultimate form.
Well, the ultimate form will be when Netflix comes and says, "We're going to do the animated epic."
Oh yeah, well,
take the money, let them cut the check.
Yes, exactly. Oh, definitely. What did I say?
So apparently you are familiar with the legend of the Central Park Elves, or maybe it was just the Central Park Rangers in the movie Elf.
There you go.
Herwenberg is our wrench. He's the one who has the power to actually put clickable links out there in the discussion forum. So
gotcha. Thank you, Herwenberg.
And yeah, I knew that name was familiar. Donnie Harijawa. Tap Dance Killer.
Yes.
Which, by the way, not this past year, but the year before, kept the Critical Blast Comic Book Awards categories. When we did our best of 2019, it took Best Comic, Best Writer, and Best Artist. So
nice. Yeah. Donnie's awesome. I haven't read that book, so I'm pretty sure it's a great book. But yeah, but Donnie's incredible. What's funny is I found him on DeviantArt, and I was just like, oh, this guy's great. And I'm like, I better hire him before he gets hired off to Marvel and DC, because then at that point I'll never be able to, afford his rates. So,
yeah, I'm seeing a lot of artists doing crowdfunded stuff, especially from South America and Portugal. And I'm like, I've really been surprised that DC and Marvel haven't put them under exclusive contract and not given them anything to do, just to take them out of the crowdfunded market.
Right. I think what's happening, in Marvel and DC, DC's contracted.
Yeah.
Right. So you have, I think, a ton of artists, really good ones, from America and Canada who are looking for work. Right. And it's much easier for those guys and gals to schmooze with the editors and get whatever prime jobs they can get out of it. And then, obviously, and then you have a huge amount of artists that come out of Spain, France, and Brazil. Brazil has some incredible artists.
Yeah.
And all throughout South America as well. And then you have, but the, I guess the artists from Europe have a little bit of a leg up because a lot of the editors like to go to European conventions and they get a hold of these guys. You schmooze with them, you get a job, right? The guys from Brazil and South America, I think they probably have a harder time maybe getting up here to make those same connections. And I think that has a lot to do with it, I think. I could be completely wrong, but who knows?
But the internet has made them available to us. So we're discovering people right and left, and some gorgeous stuff out there.
Yeah. Like I said, Jada, I found her on DeviantArt, and she's from Chile. So.
Yeah, exactly like that. And now she's got a job. Doing these books.
Yeah.
I thought I had something, but I guess I didn't. So, at which point it probably means we're both running out of steam.
Sounds good.
Is there anything anything Oswald related or not Oswald related that you're working on that you've been needing to tell people about yet that we haven't covered?
No, I think we're pretty much. I mean, I'm always working on Oswald, so that's one. And then, but what's good is Tall Tales. I think the next issue 6 will probably be out. That Kickstarter might be late July, so that might be happening. It's issue number 6 of that with Daphne. Then the next trade, it's always something else, And then
well,
yeah. Well, see, that's the thing. We have, like I said, we have a lot of material, so we're just constantly putting it out. I'm gonna probably do another Indiegogo, maybe I don't know, another month or so. I'll put up a campaign in there. It's funny because Indiegogo, I don't do very well on Indiegogo. I make a few $100 if I'm lucky, but I've probably raised probably $4,000 on there, and I tell people, I said, listen, that's $4,000 less I would have to pay $4,000 less I would have to pay my artist with if I hadn't have done them.
Sure.
So I mean, yeah, that's the one thing I tell everybody. I said, look, you're not gonna get rich doing this, but this is my very expensive hobby. I know a lot of people hate when people call it their hobbies, but I'm like, look, I've worked professionally. I've lived off of my writing, right? I know what that's like. This is my hobby, I try to do it on the highest end that as I could do it, but it's my hobby until hopefully one day it isn't.
Like, comics is a business where, for just spending a couple of $1,000s, you can only lose a couple of hundred.
Exactly.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky. Exactly.
All right. Well, JD, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight and bringing Oswald to our viewers and to our channel.
Listen, I really appreciate you having me on, RJ. I mean, I know you went out of your way for me. It was really late for you. I know.
No, not really at all. I mean, I love sitting here talking comics. I hope that I hope that you're planning on going to conventions this year, because I'm waiting to find out where's he at. Oh crap, he's in New York. Because I'm like, your path and my path growing up were so similar that I'd love to sit down and just have about 6 hours of beers with you and just talk about all the comics we were reading growing up and the writing path. You did eventually get into comics. I went into the novel side of things. I write the Destroyer series now, Warren Murphy's
nice.
character. So
wow. But that series is like what on book 5,000?
It is on book number 53, and with 54 and 55 currently sitting at the publisher. So yeah, it's been such similar tracks. I'm like, we gotta sit down and I gotta find out, what do you do differently that Daphne doesn't to shut that damn bird up? Because I haven't heard the smoke detector go off once while you've been talking.
Wow. Okay. See, you see this? Yeah. This is my office.
Okay.
And then she's in a different part of the house in her office.
And her office is where the bird is.
Exactly. Yes.
I tune into Sunday Funnies almost religiously. It's Sunday, so why not?
Right.
And I'm always hearing that alarm go off. And I even asked in the chat, I'm like, how often does Daphne burn dinner that the bird has had the opportunity to learn what the tones are for the alarm?
Yeah, she says it's me, because she doesn't really cook. I do, and I burn stuff every now and again.
Well, that's how you know when it's done.
Exactly. That's how it's cooked properly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's done now. All right. JD, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Really appreciate it. Would love to have you back anytime for any project, for any reason.
Thank you, RJ. I really appreciate it.
Everyone in the chat, we appreciate you being here as well. We don't have a show if you're not here to watch it. We encourage you to hit that share button, not because I need the views, but because I do this so that our guests get in front of people's eyeballs. And if you can help me do that by sharing it through your socials, I would greatly appreciate it. Put Oswald in front of more faces so we can open more wallets.
Thank you.
And as always, we just hope you had a